Hey, what's going on? Just getting up. Wanted to share a few thoughts. So first of all, let's just focus on what you personally know as truth at this time. Of course, you're going to know things that contrast that 10 years from now, but what do you know as truth, on the spiritual path, in your psychological reality, within your family, friends, work, circle, within yourself? What do you know about yourself? What do you call truth? Center on that. Let's just find some common ground for a second, because there's so many contrasting teachings. I think when we unfold what we honestly believe is truth, that's when the next stage can be revealed. I think when we hold back by saying, well, you can't really ever know something, you never really ever know it, because you have what you say, right? So you project and then receive. I think that the scribe and the Pharisee that walked on by let me tell you my truth. The scribe and the Pharisee that walked on by the beaten and robbed man, I think that is a warning of fake gold, fake balance. They had the masculine in the intellect of the scribe, and the feminine in the lifestyle of the Pharisee. They would travel the world, if only for one convert. They had traveling exorcists. They were doing the stuff where the scribe was thinking the stuff. So the scribe and the Pharisee that walked on by the beaten and robbed man in the parable of the Good Samaritan, they had that perfect peace. They didn't mess with the chaos of someone else's ordeal. They just kept their God and their God peace and their balance, and the sympathetic nervous system never got disturbed. They were able to observe with no judgment and not take a side and not cause division between the man who was laying there dying and the people that did it to him, because that would just be wrong. But then the Good Samaritan allows his sympathetic nervous system, his feminine energy, to be disturbed by what he saw, not to sit there and complain about it, but to take action. And when you project this is the current state of this man, and you project it as the desire for change, it will change. When you project it as, and this is just how it's always going to be for him, then you keep it as the way it is, and he will lay there and die. Palestinians will lay there and die. Ukraine, black, brown, gay, trans. Did you know that 70% of the brown-skinned people sent to El Salvador had never committed a crime? So you're walking on by in perfect peace, observing with no judgment. You have fake gold, fake peace, fake balance. You are that category that Jesus described. Those who laugh now will cry later. So you have your reward now. The Good Samaritan took action to bring healing to the man who could not receive healing except he received help. And he received authentic masculine-feminine balance by the feminine taking action from the masculine vision of peace and healing. Not just wishful thinking, but actually taking action, the feminine energy, to bring about the vision for the healing of that man in the masculine blueprint. This is the bringing together to create lasting peace when all is said and done. And that peace you get to take with you. The Scribe-Pharisee peace, you'll end up losing that peace when what you've sown, you start to reap. Because eventually, stuff happens to everybody. And eventually, you'll be in a situation and nobody will come for you to help you. Sad ordeal. Anyway, that's all. That's my thought. And that we are enthroned through contrast. So the scribe and Pharisee decided to stay one with the cosmos, the heavenly dimension created through scriptural study and evangelism. from those who went before them, those who, obeyed the law of Moses, especially since the creation of the second temple. They went with that cosmos and stayed one. They didn't lose their oneness with the heavenly dimension of the cosmos of their tribal atmosphere. They stayed in that vibration of the various teachings of those who went before them. They stayed one with the heavens. The Good Samaritan went contrast to what they were doing in their flow of peace. What he saw in the beaten and robbed man disturbed his peace. Like an alcoholic losing his third wife, it disturbs his peace enough to where he finally does something about it, takes rehab or AA seriously this time, and creates a good life and has more peace later. The alcoholic who just doesn't it's her fault, and then doesn't care how many loved ones he hurts, because he's to see how many loved ones you've hurt through your alcoholism with, I might lose my peace, I'm going to keep my peace and just say it's all their fault, will never get a better life. But if you lose your peace, you get angry enough at your pattern. If you get angry enough at your pattern, you stimulate that nervous system. That's the only way to take action to where you'll have authentic and lasting peace when you change your life, or when you help the beaten and robbed man, or when you are a social activist who moves the needle as a part of millions of people right now in the respective regions, in their respective circles of influence, their sphere of influence. You speak the message of the Good Samaritan, you'll have a lasting, authentic peace later, and peace now in speaking it. But you're enthroned as an individual. Your contrast to the white supremacist lens that's been for 400 years now in the United States. Spiritual people in the New Age and Christianity and the different religions, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness, all these people see God and they give their whole existence to God and the Scriptures. But they're seeing God through a white supremacist lens. And so the white supremacist lens created the cosmos of our nation, the heavenly dimension of our nation. 2 Peter 3:10 is very important. It's a noise that removes those heavens. It's contrast. When you're a contrast, now you're in Revelation chapter 2, or is it Revelation chapter 3, where he said, he that overcomes will sit with me on my throne, even as I overcame and sat down with my Father in his throne. So you're enthroned as a Genesis 1 Elohim, Eloah, who doesn't observe the chaos and the darkness with no judgment. The Elohim observed the chaos, and darkness was upon the earth, and everything was void. Void of what? Void of the form that it should have. Void of the form. John 5:37, you don't see his form. You don't see, in the King James, shape. You don't see the shape of God, Pharisees. They had a form, they had a shape, they had given their whole lives to God, but they didn't see the shape and the form that the new time was going to bring about as law changed to grace. So as a member of the Elohim company, you see the darkness, and now to judge it in a sense of judgmentalism would be to state what you see in a spirit of hopelessness, in a spirit of complaint. But that's not what Genesis 1 is. It's let there be light was because they saw the darkness. It wasn't, oh God, look at that darkness. It was, look at that darkness, let there be light. Look at this police look at all the hundreds of unarmed black men that have been murdered by police even since George Floyd, and the tens of thousands before George Floyd. We look at this, we observe it, and we say, let there be a revolution. And there was a revolution. And when you're part of that revolution, you receive eternal peace, a masculine-feminine balance that is real and lasting, instead of the fake gold and the fake peace in the white supremacist lens of viewing God. Your contrast from the white supremacist lens, the homophobic lens, the white nationalist, the hierarchical lens of viewing God. You depart from that. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things. I put away that cosmos. Depart from me, I never knew you, is the same thing. When Jesus said, depart from me, you've worked miracles in my name. Miracles. Real, it's true God exploits. You probably fasted and prayed a lot to get yourself in a consciousness where miracles could manifest through your ministry. The scripture says, but Jesus, we've worked miracles in your name. We've prophesied accurately in your name. And Jesus says, depart from me, I never knew you. And that's simply the growing up phase, because you are both. You are the Christ in you and the human experience that had done God exploits, God manifestations, God ministry. That's a parable, that's a metaphor. The Christ, it looks like Christ is speaking to individual people and telling them to go to hell, but it's actually, both are in you. There's the Christ of your next level and the Christ of your previous level. And in other words, there's the more adult you coming about and the previous more childish you, hierarchical you. There's the hierarchical you having a conversation with the harmonized you. And the harmonized you, which is becoming a man, whether you're male or female, it just means becoming mature, looks at the hierarchical version of yourself and says, depart from me, childish ways. I never knew you, because ultimately I never was you. Not this person. Maybe the person I used to be that, but the person I'm becoming now never was authentically you, because my eyes are opening to reality, a reality I couldn't see before. So people can see what the very woke Moses could see. That he grew up in Egyptian culture, but eventually his eyes are opened. Notice he wasn't complaining about it in his youth. But one day his eyes were opened and he became woke, the woke mind virus, as they call it in its epithet form. But he awakened to his God eye, not the Scribe Pharisee God eye that walks on by the Jews that have been put underfoot from the Egyptian culture, made slaves. But the God eye that can see the darkness and say, look, that's what Moses did. He said, let there be light. But it was in the form of, let my people go. And at that point, if you were Jonathan Jambres and you said, well, they both have a point, let's just be neutral. Then if Jonathan Jambres said, let's be neutral, they would have been making a very conscious choice for Pharaoh. If you're saying let's be neutral at a time of Trumpism, you're making a very conscious choice for the alt-right, the religious right, the Herod and the Pharisees of today. Jesus was the left of his day. Moses was the left of his day. BLM is the left of our day. So the Martin Luther King Jr. spirit was a contrast to the Christianity of the time. Jesus was a contrast of the Judaism of the time. Moses was a contrast of the Egyptian spirituality of the time. So when you're a contrast, that's how you're enthroned, because you're enthroned through distinction. Otherwise, you're not sitting in a throne of power to create change, because there's no change to make if you're one with the cosmos or the cultural norms. If you're just a parallel of 1950s corruption, you're one with all that, you're spoken well of, but you're one with everything that is going on in your cultural spirituality, that you inherited from your natural and spiritual parents. But when you split off and become a contrasting voice that is literally from the future, not a contrasting voice that says, I'm sick of y'all, I don't like y'all, I don't feel like doing this anymore. That's a contrast, but it's rebellion for the sake of rebellion. When you're a contrast like Moses or like Jesus or like MLK or like Obama, you're a contrast because you have a greater illumination and you're speaking against something that you already lived in. Moses already lived in Egyptian spirituality. Jesus already lived in Judaism. MLK already lived in typical American Christianity. Your contrast to something you're speaking against something, not from a judgmental heart, but from a very knowing heart from experience. You already experienced it. Spirit over soul theology is how we got to supremacy consciousness, and it infected every area of life. So going from the cosmos of hierarchy that we've had for 400 years in this nation, and people are doing it right now in South Africa, from hierarchy to harmonization, you are enthroned as a voice that can bring the contrast, not in the glob, in the cloud of witnesses that are all just one with the heavenly dimension. There's no contrast. You're a continuing flow of what was. But when you contrast from the voice of God, now you're enthroned in that voice as a distinction that is right there in the void, in the darkness, and says, let there be light. And then let's separate old from new, higher and lower waters. And then let's the fruit tree in day 3, and ordained lights, sun, moon, and stars for signs, seasons, days, and years. Heights and depths on the day 5, birds in the heights, fish in the deep, comprehending with all saints what is the height, breadth, depth, and length. Day 6, man and beast, higher and lower nature become one, affirming each other as equals. And that's what brings you to day 7, rest. So the Elohim speaking these progressions into whatever society. That blueprint of Genesis 1 is wonderful because it works for any situation, any time, any age change. And the change of the age happens every 2,000 to 3,000 years. So when you are enthroned, you become, there's no throne without a king. So you become not just one with all anymore, but you're in that category in the book of Revelation where it says we shall be kings and priests. What does it say? What does it say? We shall be kings and priests in heaven? No. We shall be kings and priests upon earth forever. So your word is a king with a king's decree that creates contrast. You're not of that number that says, I just won't say anything because I don't want to cause division. Jesus caused division so that a new world could be created. Your cells divide so that you can maintain health. I love you guys.